The Other 98% is a not-for-profit, grassroots organization of social movements who stand against corporate corruption and democratic dishonesty, with the goal of raising awareness and ultimately inspiring action. It's a network of concerned people that shines a light on economic injustice, undue corporate influence, and threats to democracy. The official mission statement of the Other 98% says that they intend to be a storytelling force that stirs people to action, to challenge the stranglehold of corporate power by creating their own educational tools and crafting their own narrative, one that sparks the cultural shift needed to build new systems for a healthy and vibrant new world. It's a pretty vague mission statement, and that's because they try to deal in so many different social movements. But the overarching theme throughout everything they do is that the political and economic structure should be working for everyday working-class Americans, and not the elite 2% of CEOs, bankers, and lobbyists who, to quote the organization's founder, have hijacked our democracy and rigged the system to serve themselves. The Other 98% predates the similar slogan of the Occupy Wall Street movement, and while not directly affiliated, they actually played a part in getting Occupy off the ground. The Other 98% went live on Tax Day 2010 and was founded by a collection of graphic designers, animators, protesters, web developers, live streamers, and coordinators, all with years of experience in their respective fields. The idea was to use their collective talents to create a platform that would shine a light on economic injustice, undue corporate influence, and threats to democracy. Once the truth about corporate lobbyists and elected officials is made known, the Other 98% works to mobilize groups of protesters in sometimes traditional but often very creative and innovative ways. Under Joe Freeman's model of social movements, the Other 98% is to many social movements a means of co-opting the internet, their pre-existing communications network, for the purposes of disseminating the ideas of their movement. The Other 98% provides individual movements with a united platform on which to share their stories, one with far more exposure than any of them could attain on their own. Their website is even modeled to look like a news site, with an assortment of stories and causes indicated by catchy headlines and big colorful thumbnails. In this sense, they're sort of a curator of information pertaining to any social movement that falls under their thematic umbrella. Each article is concise, and the most important information is even bolded to make them easy to consume. Most of the articles also come with petitions on the sidebar that are easy to fill out and create a way to show the tangible results of these movements. Everything is intentionally crafted to make their content accessible and easy to share. Also, just a little web designer note here, but it's a really sleek responsive design that scales from desktop to tablet to mobile, making it accessible from all platforms. As far as the other two elements Freeman calls necessary in a successful social movement, the Other 98% tries to create content that will be controversial and instigative in hopes of creating the crisis for a social movement to rally around. But ultimately, the response to that content from the movement and those who oppose it is out of their hands. Here's an example of the kind of provoking content they produce.
To find the greatest words.
education and job creation and an incentive.
It's dramatic and well-produced, but most importantly it's clear. There's a lot of information, but it's conveyed in a very concise manner and complemented by visuals and stylized editing that make it engaging in a way that an article or statistical report just can't be. Whether or not their content is the cause of the sparks, when a movement does ignite, the other 98% will be there to document it, and then share the stories with the world in a manner that lends itself to viral reception. And once people are interested and energized, the organizers at the 98% are there to help shape that force into an effective social movement. And speaking of stories, the other 98% loves to tell stories. Whether it's in the content they create, or through the protests they organize, everything comes back to the narrative and telling compelling stories that will resonate with people. Statistics and raw facts can only go so far, where a human, emotional connection through narrative can be a powerful force. A recent example of this principle happened a few months ago when that photograph of the dead Syrian boy whose body had washed up on a Turkish beach went viral. At the time, reports had already been released about the thousands of Syrian refugees dying trying to escape their country. But since those are just abstract numbers, we kind of just shrug it off because we can't conceptualize them. But with one picture of a single dead boy released online, there was an immediate emotional connection to him and an outpouring of empathy around the world. The photo tells the story of their struggle in a way that mere words never could. Similarly, the other 98% uses narrative to relate with people. It's not usually as dramatic or traumatizing as that photograph, instead tending more towards comedy and satire, but the principle is the same. Tell stories that will communicate the message of a movement in a way that will engage and resonate emotionally with an audience. Similarly, the other 98% uses narrative to relate with people. It's not usually as dramatic or traumatizing as that photograph, instead tending more towards comedy and satire, but the principle is the same. Tell stories that will communicate the message of the movement in a way that will engage and resonate emotionally with the audience. A lot of it is high concept and high production value, which gives it a very professional feel that legitimizes the content. Here's a quick example of the kind of content they make.
Here at Exxon, we hate your children. We all know the climate crisis will rip their world apart, but we don't care, because it's making us rich. That's right. Every year, Congress gives the fossil fuel industry over $10 billion in subsidies. That's your tax dollars lining our pockets. Making a fortune destroying your kids' future? At Exxon, that's what we call good business. ExxonHatesYourChildren.com.
This piece parodies the sort of campaign ad trope where a candidate will talk directly to the viewer and make his pitch. But overtop the reassuring instrumental music is the supposed Exxon representative telling the dirty truth about their practices instead of the usual lies. It's a humorous contrast, but it's also effective in communicating the facts about the government's subsidies to shady corporations in a way that's more likely to resonate with people and inspire action than just handing out a piece of paper with bullet points would. Sorry, McLeibel. This spoof commercial was so popular online that there was actually a campaign to get the spot aired on national television, but ExxonMobil threatened any stations with a massive lawsuit if they dared air the factually inaccurate commercial. Here's one more example of how the other 98% uses narrative and entertainment to communicate the message of a movement.
You're performing in Target?
Yes, go band. Bring the band in.
Wait a minute! I can't shop here! Target's playing games with our political system. Target ain't people, so why should it be allowed to play around with our democracy? Target ain't people, so why should it be that they should play around with our democracy?
Get rid of the unions. Get rid of the queers.
Why should it be allowed to play around with our democracy? a supreme wet dream. The people have to rise up and show these hacks. Let's boycott Target, take America back. I can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Target the people, so why should it be allowed to play around with our democracy? Target ain't people, so why should it be allowed to play around with our democracy? I can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. I can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. I can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. I can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay. Can't understand what makes Target think they'll get away. Gonna make them pay.
This video is a typical tactic of the other 98%, where they document a live protest and present it in a documentary-esque fashion that takes the experience and presents it to, in this case, the over 1.5 million YouTube viewers. It brings the audience into the store, and through the reactions of the employees and the customers, the viewer feels like they were actually there. It also gives potential activists a taste of what it would be like to participate, because all of these productions are ultimately to build a base of passionate individuals who will get involved in their local scene. The protest itself is telling a story, with characters, props, and a frustratingly catchy song. But whether it's the physical protesting or the created content, it always comes back to the narrative and telling a compelling story that will resonate with people. There are many similarities in the politics, or whatever the opposite of politics is, between the Occupy Wall Street movement and the other 98%. Both represent the will of the formerly silent majority of working-class Americans. They oppose specific policies and even the system itself that has allowed corporations to influence government decisions. The problem with trying to protest a decentralized power is that the modern tactics, and by that I mean relative to post-modernity, are no longer viable. I don't think we cover this specifically in this course, but in their book Multitude, Hart and Negri talk about how a decentralized power can only be contested by their subjects if the offensive comes in a similarly decentralized form. Power structures have shifted, from centralized capital cities to decentralized capital E empires, and where in the past you could lay siege to a castle and take control, you can't contain an entire government that's run on information. A revolution in the streets that takes the White House by force won't have gained anything valuable, other than I guess the inevitable media attention, and then there are so many more reasonable ways to obtain that. Washington is the symbolic center of power in America, but without it, the rest of the information-based network will continue to function, and the revolutionaries will eventually be detained and likely imprisoned for their actions. In the same way, traditional protests aren't as effective because physical spaces are much less important to the functioning of power structures. But if a social movement is so decentralized, and its members so individually autonomous, like the Occupy Wall Street movement, it can't be shut down by the same systemic strategies. It takes on a life of its own, with no hierarchy dictating its actions, swarm logic sets in, and the movement functions organically and unpredictably. Also, there's no leader who can be removed, causing the whole system to fall apart. The other 98% takes the decentralization one step further, and it acts as a sort of network of networks, a movement of movements. Their reach covers so many individual, autonomous, and themselves decentralized organizations that they are really a social movement to get more people interested in social movements. Very postmodern. The organization acts as a connecting node between all the separate movements. Similar to how piracy sites won't actually host illegal content, the other 98% simply provides a platform that directs to the good stuff. They do get involved with the groups, but they're careful not to put themselves at risk of liability. If any individual movement crosses a line and things get ugly, the other 98% can't be held responsible. Like the White House, they're more of a symbolic center of power than the actual summit of hierarchical structure. It's a hard word. The results of the other 98% are what you would expect from a reformative, bordering on transformative social movement, which is slow progress in a long and seemingly unending war against a vast decentralized power structure, with small victories along the way. But the voice of the working class is being heard, and a shift in legislation is noticeable. Probably the most notable accomplishment of the other 98% was contributing to the 300,000 signatures on a petition to end Congress's sequestration budget cuts.
Can you please turn off the video camera?
Fine, let's just keep going.
Okay, we have hundreds of people here whose signatures you can see for themselves. We also have a flash drive here with the remaining 300,000. We hope the speaker will give us his full consideration and end the sequester immediately.
I'm ready to take it and pass it along.
Okay, good. Thank you
Thanks for
very
coming
much.
by. Have a nice day.
Yep.
What just happened here? We're at John Boehner's office, and can you just let us know what happened?
Sure. I'm Congressman Grayson. I represent Central Florida. I'm here because 300,000 people want to tell John Boehner with one voice to end the sequester. Washington does not normally see 300,000 people speak as one. I am your legs today, and to some extent I'm your voice. But I'm not the one who matters. What matters is that we work together and show our numbers, because in numbers there are strengths. This is a very exciting development. I think that they're going to have to listen.